before she starts having existential thoughts about death, archetypal Barbie wakes up every morning in Barbie land feeling so grateful for everything that Barbie land has to offer and all of the gifts and the blessings that it has to offer. There are so many things that I could say about that amazing film Barbie. How many people have seen Barbie? Oh, what? Where are you people? So that whole reference was completely lost over you.
No spoilers.
It's only the most important cultural film this decade. Well, I just hopelessly assumed that you'd all seen it. And I thought how clever it would be to open my words with a little reference to Barbie, and none of you have seen it. Well, to all you Barbies and Kens out there, you're in for a treat eventually, but it's not a spoiler alert, but I will just tell you that archetypal Barbie wakes up every morning in Barbie land and is just so in awe of all of the gifts and the blessings that exist there. And until she goes into the real world, she is completely embraced by all of those gifts. And I've just been thinking about it in terms of gratitude and blessings of gratitude. And there are so many of them. And I was thinking about camp, and some of you have just come back from camp. Some people are still at camp, and camp is an amazing way to spend a summer. But certainly at the camp that I spend time at, which is Ramah of the Rockies, when I have the honor, and it really is an honor to lead tefillah, to lead the prayer with the youngest kids, we start every prayer service singing Modeh ani lefanecha melechai v'kayam, which are actually the first words, and many of you know this, the first words in the Siddur, which basically say, thank you for returning my soul to my body and giving me an opportunity to experience the joy of another day in this body and on this earth. And this idea that, waking up with an attitude of gratitude, which is so deeply and intrinsically Jewish, and sometimes what we do in a camp setting, and also when we have the once a month Shabbat morning tefillah for our school here, we often go around with a little circle, like, what are you feeling grateful for this morning? And it's always very moving and inspiring what people are grateful for. Many people, of course, say their dogs, which is something I feel grateful for, and so on. But this whole idea of gratitude is not just about saying thank you, but how gratitude gets translated into a whole series of brachot, of blessings. And there is no parsha that is more apropos to that concept of what it means to say blessings. Because right after we say Modeh ani lefanecha, we have the Birkot HaShachar, which are these blessings that specifically acknowledge all of the ways in which my body is coming into wakefulness, into mindfulness, opening my eyes, stretching my body, putting on my clothes, putting on shoes, walking steps into the world, thinking about Ozeh Yisrael Bigvura, Noam this morning, those of you who are here, there were a few of you, not many, but Noam this morning led the Birkot HaShachar, led the morning blessings. Ozeh Yisrael Bigvura, Tei Yisrael B'Tifara, which in some ways are about clothing, but in other ways they're about how we have the strength and we inhabit, and we allow that strength to inhabit our bodies so that we can do what we need to do in this world, right? And then, of course, there's the blessings of appreciation in nature. Since being back here, I've just been blown away. Yesterday I went for a mountain bike ride, and I just cannot believe it's August. It looks like May. Just how green and lush and verdant it is because of all of the moisture that we've been having. And so, yes, we can get concerned and upset about the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, I spoke to my friend Lev, who's been in 118 degrees temperature some days. But there's, we're so lucky and so grateful to live in a place that is still so green and so beautiful and so lush, so vibrant. The colours are so vibrant. And this morning, walking with my dog, I was sort of so struck by the fact that, at one point there's a couple taking selfies, with the mountain backdrop on the south border creek part, Another part, there's a woman sipping her coffee and looking at the flowing stream. And on the bridge over the creek, there's this Chinese woman who I see every day doing Tai Chi on the bridge, looking at the water. And it's just like, wow, this is amazing. And I feel like saying brachot, saying blessings for all of it, right? And then because I've been away for quite a lot of the summer, I didn't get a CSA share, a community supported agriculture share, but I've done it now starting in August. And on Thursday afternoon, I went across the street and got my share of farm fresh vegetables that had been picked that morning from Red Wagon Organic Farm, and the kale and the leeks and the eggplant and the tomatoes and the cucumbers. And it was just so incredible then to have these fresh, wonderful vegetables going into Shabbat. And all of this is to point to the fact that when the Torah says, as we've already heard, little spoiler alerts from Susan earlier, when it says "Ve'achalta v'savata uveirachta et Adonai Elohecha al haaretz hatova asher natan lach," right, which is you will eat and then you will feel sova, you will feel satisfied, a condition that many of us don't feel a lot of the time, to be honest. As a culture, I think we don't really feel satisfied in the abundance that we have. We always want more, right? So that whole notion of what it really means to be satisfied, I think, is really important. But then from that place of feeling full and satisfied, it says, Uveirachta, you will offer blessing, right? And I've talked about this before. Many of you know there's a distinction between halachot, between laws that are deoraita, which come from the Torah itself, and laws that are derabanan, which come from the rabbis. So technically speaking, the blessings that we make before food, or the blessings we make when we see like a rainbow, or when we see a beautiful mountain, or when we hear thunder, all of those blessings that we have in our liturgy are rabbinic. But saying Birkat Hamazon, saying the blessing after we eat, is actually from the Torah itself, because of that phrase, Ve'achalta v'savata uveirachta. You will eat, you will feel satisfied, and then you will bless. And the Torah comes with an incredible and powerful warning that says, watch out, because it is very human to feel full and to feel satisfied and let that feeling overtake us with a sense of like, look what I have. Look what I've created. Look what I've grown. Look how special and important I am. And all of the world's problems, you could say, come from the fact that we don't stop and say, wow, I've eaten and I feel this sense of satisfaction, and now I'm going to acknowledge the source of all of those blessings, right? So the Talmud says famously, let anybody who experiences joy through the sensory world, through our senses, things that we taste and touch and smell and see and hear, anyone who enjoys nihine, anyone who enjoys something from this physical world without saying a bracha, without saying a blessing, ki'ilu says the Gemara, it's as if ma'al, as if we have misappropriated property that belongs to the temple, right? Which is back in the day that there was a temple, it was a very grave misdemeanor to misappropriate temple property, right? The image, of course, is that the world is like God's temple, everything in it is sacred, and if we're going to enjoy and experience something of the beauty of that world, it's as if we are experiencing something from God's temple, so we acknowledge the source of it. If we just take it without acknowledging the source, then it's like we're stealing something from the temple, which is a very powerful idea, which I'll come back to in a second. But the other midrash that's from this parsha, later on in a bit that we didn't read, it says, "V'ata Yisrael, ma Hashem sho'alecha." So now, Israel, what does God ask of you? Ma. The word ma just means what. But the rabbis say, this is a proof text for the fact that we actually have to say 100 brachot every day. Because they say, don't read this as ma, read it as mea. Which is a classic kind of midrashic move that the rabbis make, even though their words are not the same words at all, but they're saying that when it says ma, what does God ask of you? God asks of you 100 blessings a day, right? And so this idea that somehow just experiencing the world in all of its beauty with its fragrances and joyful sights and smells. And I've been reading this incredible book, I've forgotten the title right now, but it's all about how the animal world experiences the senses, and it is like mind-blowing when it really goes into the physiology of like a dog and what a dog is smelling. Anyone who has a dog knows that you like every 2 seconds there's like, but there's like how a dog feels its world through the sense of smell, how other creatures through touch, other creatures through hearing, and it's just very profound, like the way that our senses for all creatures really are very, very heightened, and it's what gives us a sense of relationship to the world. So how we experience the world, and now how we acknowledge from a Jewish point of view, or from really a spiritual point of view, how we acknowledge the source of the blessings, right, is this powerful idea of this idea that if we don't, we're somehow stealing from the temple. And this idea of 100 blessings a day is really, it's a rabbinic kind of thing that they say, but of course, can you imagine if every single one of us said 100 blessings of gratitude every single day, like what a different kind of world it would be? Just acknowledging, like every time we see something beautiful, we go, wow, that's so beautiful, I acknowledge the source of that beauty. Or every time we smell something, every time we eat something. But food in particular, I think, is very, very powerful for this parsha, because it's talking about the abundance that the land is going to give us when we go into this new place, and the danger of not acknowledging and just for taking for granted all of the food that we have. And this idea that V'achalta v'savata is not just about eating the produce of the land, but it's about allowing ourselves, as I mentioned before, to just take time, which I have to say I am not good at, to stop and just look inside and say, am I satisfied? Have I eaten enough? Sometimes for me, eating in community, I eat way more than I need, because there's something about the social anxiety of being among a group of people. I heard that another rabbi who's in this room at the moment may have said something last Shabbat about just taking what you need rather than filling our plates with more than we need. And that's a practice that I think is really... Is that true? Did you say that?
He's concerned that everyone should have first.
Right. Exactly, but it's a really important practice, because we're so blessed. We have Karen week after week providing an abundance of food, but sometimes we, and when I say we, I definitely say, including I, it's like we see all this food and we want to just take it all, but it's like, what do we really need to feel satisfied? And if we can really take what we need and feel that sense of satisfaction, and then afterwards offer blessing. And Larry, today is definitely a day that we should be doing Birkat Hamazon. So it's if we don't do it this Shabbat, then And so this idea of first of all, really, like the Torah is saying, eat. Eat, Bubala, eat, right? It's like the land is producing all of this incredible food. Eat it, but eat what you need. Eat what you need to help you feel satisfied. And once you are able to stop and say, I am satisfied, offer blessings. Because if you don't, warns the Torah, you may just become, a cow that kicks, right? You may behave in an arrogant way that kind of implies that I have produced all of this food. Something else that I want to say is that before that there is this powerful idea which comes, of course, into as a cultural reference beyond the Torah, which is this idea of a man cannot live on bread alone, right? Lo adam yachol. What's that actual language of the verse? Halechem levado, on bread alone. But then it says, Ki kol matzah mipi Hashem yichiyeh. That a person will live from everything that comes out of God's mouth. And it's so interesting to me, that verse that talks about God's mouth. Like, I don't think any of us literally believe that God has a mouth, but the fact that the mouth is the organ with which we eat it, the process of eating begins. And it's saying anything that comes out of God's mouth is what we live on. There's bread and there's not bread, right? And there's a very, very powerful teaching from the Ari, the 16th century Kabbalist of Sfat, quoted by the Sfat Emet, the 19th century Hasidic master, that talks about the fact that really, when it says a person can't live on bread alone, it's really saying we cannot live lives that are just material, gashmiut. We can't just live in a material world. There has to be a spiritual world that accompanies the physical world, right? And that is true of food too. That every mouthful of food we eat has a way in which it nourishes us physically, and we know about nourishing, and we know about what's good for us and what's not good for us to eat, and what our bodies need and what they don't need, right? Most of us know that, some of us ignore it, but we know it anyway. But there's also like how we get nourishment for our souls. And what the Ari says is that it's touching into the essential essence of what our food is, the pnimi ut, the inner dimension of what food is. And then, says the Ari, and that's really Torah. So I'm thinking about the idea that we're nourished by food, but we're also nourished by Torah. And of course on this Shabbat, the first Shabbat where we are celebrating our new Torah, it's like, how is bringing a new Torah to the community also a way of nourishing us, and also a way of helping us feel sustained and full and satisfied so that we can offer blessings, right? So there's this way in which, when it says a person should not live on food alone, we know that if we were only physical beings, some people survive long and live long lives just as physical beings who just, eat and do the other things that it means to be human. But there's something about having that symbiotic relationship where our food and our relationship to Torah and spiritual life are somehow in this dynamic, important relationship, Another important film, which I hope some of you have seen, Oppenheimer. More of you seen Oppenheimer than Barbie?
Yes.
There's moments in that film, especially when the Dr. Niels Bohr, the quantum physicist played by Kenneth Branagh in the movie, is really talking about the idea. You know what? I'm not going to talk about that. I do not need to talk about quantum physics in this debate. But it is a good film. It's a really good film, but not as good as Barbie. Anyway. So, keeping in mind this idea that food nourishes us physically, but being nourished physically is not enough. To be living, breathing humans, we also need to be nourished spiritually, right? And to bear in mind, as Reb Bracha said to me earlier, this is actually the only place where the Torah says it's a mitzvah to give a bracha, to say a blessing. That verse going back to the Achalta v'Sabatu ve'ilachta. And the idea that saying blessings after meals is from the Torah, where saying blessing before food is from the rabbis. And how from that verse we get the essence of what Birkat Hamazon is. We often don't, and I'm, guilty as charged. We have a lovely Shabbat Kiddush lunch together, we enjoy community, and then, we sort of wander off and do our own thing. But there is something about stopping and saying we're actually going to offer these blessings. And what the Midrash says, it's so interesting, because Birkat Hamazon traditionally has 4 blessings that are associated to it, right? The first blessing is Al Hamazon, which is for the food itself. And then the second blessing is...
First bracha is Hazan et The first bracha is Hazan et Hakol. The second bracha is Al Hamazon.
Hazan et Hakol is for the food itself. The second bracha is for Ha'aretz HaTova, Shem Natan Lach, is for the land. The first blessing is for the food, the second blessing is for the land. The third blessing is for Jerusalem. And the fourth blessing is for Hatov v'Hametiv, or who Hativ, who Metiv, who Yetiv Lanu, for recognizing the this source as being the one who is good, who will be good, and bring goodness to the world. So those are the 4 levels of Birkat Hamazon: the food, the land, Jerusalem, and sort of universal sense of goodness, right? So that they extract all of that from those verses. I think that my jet lag is sort of giving me a very strong message. It's time to come in for a landing, so to speak. And I want to just finish by quoting something. Thank you. I want to finish by quoting something from Abraham Joshua Heschel on this whole idea of appreciation and wonder and saying blessings. It is if we really have awareness, and if we really sort of notice what's going on in the world around us, I don't think it's hard to say 100 blessings a day. If you're a halachic Jew, it's easy to say 100 blessings a day, because if you daven 3 times a day, the Amidah has 19 blessings in it. So you're already almost there, just 3 times a day davening. Then you have Birkat Hamazon every time you eat. But like those of us who aren't necessarily in that mindset, can you imagine just every time we notice something beautiful, every time we eat, every time we smell something beautiful? And the way that Abraham Joshua Heschel says this in the amazing book God in Search of Man, he says the sense for the miracles which are daily with us, the sense for the continual marvels, is the source of prayer. There is no worship, no music, no love, if we take for granted the blessings or defeats of living. No routine of social, physical, or physiological order must dull our sense of surprise at the fact that there is a social, a physical, or a physiological order. We are trained in maintaining our sense of wonder by uttering a prayer before the enjoyment of food. Each time we're about to drink a glass of water, we remind ourselves of the eternal mystery of creation. Blessed are you, by whose word all things come into being. A trivial act and a reference to the supreme miracle. Wishing to eat bread or fruit, to enjoy a pleasant fragrance or a cup of wine, on tasting fruit in season for the first time, on seeing a rainbow or the ocean, or noticing trees when they blossom, on meeting a sage in Torah or in secular learning, on hearing good or bad tidings. We are taught to invoke God's great name and our awareness of God. Even on performing a physiological function, we say, "Blessed are you who heals all flesh and does wonders." This, he says, is one of the goals of the Jewish way of living, to experience commonplace deeds as spiritual adventures, to feel the hidden love and wisdom in all things. So on this Shabbat of Akev and the Shabbat where we celebrate our new Torah, may we see the hidden mystery and beauty in everything that we touch and taste and smell and eat and hear and see. And may we have that sense of wonder that leads to a constant feeling of appreciation and gratitude for the source of all being, and that we are nourished internally and externally with our food. Shabbat Shalom.